What do you do if you've got elbow pain during the bench press and it's preventing you from making progress, preventing you from putting more weight on the bar? Welcome to 2 Minute Tuesday, the weekly video designed to help you better understand pain or injury, keep you healthy, and improve your performance. Elbow pain is a very common complaint for people who bench press a lot, whether you're brand new to the sport of powerlifting or new to bench pressing, or you've been doing it quite a while. Elbow pain can definitely creep up on you and become a frustrating injury, frustrating source of pain. So if you're dealing with elbow pain, I've got 3 tips for you today that'll hopefully help you overcome this. Number one, first thing you want to look at is your grip width. Look at your setup on the bar, especially if you're new to bench pressing with the barbell and you haven't had somebody take a look at your setup. Then this is probably step one for you. A common problem that I see is people get under the bar and they put their hands a little bit too narrow, and their elbows flare out when they bench. So the hand is here, the elbow is out to the side, and this can put undue stress on the elbow and the shoulder. It's just not an efficient way to lift. So believe it or not, you might want to grab the bar a little bit more wider than you think. That way you have the hand or your grip right below your elbow, so your forearm is perpendicular in a nice straight line. That's a little bit more symmetrical for the forces of the bar, and it's just more efficient all around when you're trying to push that bar off of you. So not too wide, not too narrow, right around here, so that your forearm and your fist is lining up right above your elbow. So that's number one. Check out your form, especially if you're new to benching. Tip number two is you want to make sure that there hasn't been any crazy spikes in your volume or your load. So what does that actually mean? You want to look back at your training history and see if this pain is volume dependent, meaning how many sets and reps you've done over a given period of time, whether it's within one gym session or over the course of a week, or if it's load dependent. So if it's volume dependent, you want to take a look back and see if you can cut back on the sets and reps that you do in a given session. So say, for example, your elbow pain comes on with 4 sets of 8, and you know for a fact that sets of 8 or more usually elicit that pain. You might temporarily want to cut down to maybe sets of 4 or 6 or even 3, and maybe up the intensity a little bit, meaning put a little bit more weight on the bar. Now, if your elbow pain is load dependent, which would be the opposite, meaning that it only comes on after a certain weight, like only after 185 or only when you hit 225, then you might want to temporarily mess with the rep schemes so that you can still get a lot of volume, but cut that weight down just a little bit until things adapt, and then you can go ahead and go over that volume threshold or over that load threshold. So step number 2 is going to be look back at your training history, make sure there are no spikes in volume or load, and adjust accordingly. Tip number 3, I should say, is to reduce the range of motion requirements on your elbow. So what does this mean? I've got 2 variations for that. You can do what's called a floor press or a board press. So with a floor press, you're taking away the bench, setting up that barbell really low on the rack, and then literally benching from the floor. What this does is it prevents all the way, that range of motion all the way, prevents you from going all the way back. Really just keeps you at 90. It limits the range of motion and will allow you to overload that bar without having to go full range of motion. So you can still develop the chest muscles, still work on the bench while eliminating all the stresses on the elbow. Or you can do what's called a board press, which is they sell a specialty board that goes right on your chest here. You can have a partner hold it for you, or they sell attachments that you can put on the bar yourself. And it does the same thing. It really limits the amount of range of motion that you need. The board will stop you, sit right in your chest and stop you here instead of allowing you to go all the way down to the chest. So again, does the same thing, accomplishes the same thing. It'll reduce the range of motion requirements, allowing you to overload the bar without putting so much stress on the elbow. So if you are dealing with elbow pain on the bench, those are 3 tips for you. Number 1, make sure your grip is not off. Number 2, make sure there are no spikes in your volume or load and adjust accordingly. And finally, tip number 3, consider a floor press or a board press variation. That way you can still bench press, still hit the pecs without putting too much stress on the elbow.